Hi, today we are going to explain the plot of a movie called The Human Contract, which was released in 2008.
Yes, we will.
Well, let's start with the story.
But you have to trust me.
In a bar, a woman named Michael is talking with Julian Wright, who is a successful businessman, but his life is unhappy. During their conversation, the bartender notices them, and soon Brenda comes over to Julian. He then introduces Brenda and Michael. After being introduced, Michael then leaves the two of them to talk. Soon, Brenda invited Julian to have fun, but during an exciting activity, Julian suddenly vomited. Brenda, who was disappointed because she had not reached the top, had to stop and then left Julian.
Was an unusual name for a woman.
Meanwhile, Julian, who was upset, suddenly broke the glass in the bathroom, which injured his hand. Shortly, Julian then looked for a file and then photographed it with a camera. The next day, Julian and Larry rush to hold a meeting. Julian asks if E.J. Whiters is ready, and during the meeting, Julian looks nervous. But it seems that the agreement in the meeting was successful, which made Julian get praise from E.J. Whiters. And after that, Julian and E.J. then went to his office to talk. E.J. then told Julian that he will retire soon, and E.J. will promote Julian afterwards. After work, Julian and his colleagues Larry, Greg, and Cheryl stopped by the bar to chat. They talked about many things, especially about their achievements and work situations. They then toasted the achievements they had made and then dispersed. But before they left, Larry had asked Julian what happened to Brenda. And it turned out that Brenda, after failing to reach her peak, told Larry's wife, who was chatty about the incident. Larry also revealed that he knew that Lynn, who was Julian's ex-girlfriend, had sent divorce papers. Julian confirmed that he was fine and said that it had been for a year. Then Julian's best friend then congratulated him on his success at work. After that, Julian decided to go home to his mother's house. But when he called his mother did not answer him. It turned out that Julian's mother was sleeping while listening to music. They then talked. Julian returned to his room and reminisced about his childhood. He asked his mother where his belongings were, and during a long conversation, Julian took out some money and gave it to his mother, but it actually made his mother angry. The next day, Julian went through his usual routine. In the evening, Julian called Greg and asked him to send an email related to his work, but at that moment, he accidentally saw Michael looking happy as she drove her car. Julian then hung up on Greg and tried to catch up with Michael. As Julian followed Michael, he unknowingly arrived at a place where the woman and her gang had gathered to watch a big-screen movie at a funeral. And Michael was surprised by Julian's sudden arrival next to her, so Michael introduced Julian to her friends, especially Thalia. Throughout the movie, Michael watched Julian's movements, and after the movie ended, they talked about their perspectives on life, Michael trying to explain that she was a woman who lived life by upholding the concept of freedom. As they chatted, a man suddenly called out to Michael, and an argument ensued between Michael and the man in a foreign language that Julian did not understand. Julian initially wanted to stop their argument, but Michael said to let them talk for a while, but Julian was furious at the man's rude attitude and made him accidentally release the grip that made the man fall unconscious. Michael continued to watch Julian as he helped the man leave, and it seemed that Michael was in love. So Julian asked Michael who the man was, and Michael replied that he was her friend. But Julian asked if Michael meant a date, but Michael immediately dismissed that and firmly replied that the man was not her boyfriend. During the conversation, Michael focused on Julian's bandaged hand, so Michael invited Julian to accompany her to Julian's house, where Michael changed the bandages on Julian's hand. After Michael finished tending to Julian's wound, Michael walked around looking in every nook and cranny of Julian's house. Michael finally found a safe and pressed a lot of buttons. Then Michael asked Julian where his camera was, and shortly after, Michael suddenly opened the cloth on her body and created a sudden hot atmosphere, at which time Michael wanted Julian to take a picture of her. In between, Michael told Julian that her mother was a pianist and what her life was like. When Michael was 14 years old, her father taught her to play the piano and was determined that she should play like her mother, but she didn't like it. And Michael's story made Julian look attentive, which unknowingly brought them close to having fun, but Michael stopped the action. The next day, Julian is in a meeting with Greg, and soon Larry approaches him and asks if Julian saw a movie recently and hit someone at a funeral. Larry then tells Julian that the person he hit was Joshua Marchell, who was trying to become an American citizen. At that time, Larry had called him and told him that his lawsuit could complicate his application to become an American citizen, and hearing the news, Julian seemed happy. Larry then laughed but returned to talking seriously and said that Julian still had to give him $70,500 to make his case go away. After finishing work, Julian then approached his mother's residence. There was Rita, Julian's sister. They then confirmed each other's news. Soon Julian entered carrying wall paint to repaint his childhood room. While in the room, Julian remembered that there was a secret place on the floor to store his belongings. He returned to open it and saw several photos and also a newspaper. Julian's cell phone then rang. Michael called him and asked Julian to meet her immediately. And when Julian arrived, Michael asked Julian to get into her car. Michael said that Julian had photographed her earlier and now it was her turn to record him. And on the way, Julian complimented Michael, who looked beautiful tonight. Michael then blindfolded Julian with a cloth. She said this would not hurt Julian, but she asked Julian to remain silent. Michael then told Thalia to take her place in the fun while Michael was busy filming. Julian, angry at the joke, got out of the car and Michael, feeling guilty, tried to persuade him and managed to get him back in the car. Michael seemed to be teasing Julian by playing the video she had recorded, but it made Julian even angrier, and he immediately vented his feelings to Michael. And Thalia, seeing this, quickly grabbed the camera and captured the moment of romance between the two. The next day, Julian was made happy because Michael suddenly sent him a gift. Then Julian asked Cheryl to contact the flower shop so that he could give it to Michael. Cheryl was astonished by Julian's attitude, who was romantically involved, said that Cheryl did not usually see Julian like this. Upon opening the gift, Julian was made to smile, with a message from Michael saying that his camera was old and outdated. Not long after, Julian then approached Michael with flowers to give her. At that place, Julian then met Thalia, and they laughed at each other. Julian then asked if it was true that it was the place where Michael worked, but Michael was at the LA Museum right now, so Julian then come to her. But an unexpected thing happened where Julian saw Michael making out with a man. It also made him jealous. Then he immediately approached her to ask who the man was. Suddenly, Michael panicked and took him to a place to discuss it. While Julian continued to ask many questions that forced Michael to finally admit that the man was her husband. Julian was very disappointed by the confession. He was then thoughtful when he heard the fact that Michael was married. Although Michael tried to apologize, but because of his disappointment, Julian then left her. In the car, Julian picked up the phone from his mother, who asked him to go home immediately. When he arrived at his mother's house, Julian saw the commotion that occurred, and because he was angry to see his sister being treated harshly, Julian then fought with Rita's husband and made him fall unconscious. The incident then made him spend the night at the police station. The next day, Larry came to pick Julian up. It seemed that Larry was annoyed with Julian, who was often involved in fights. Larry then drove Julian back to his mother's house. Rita greeted him sadly because his brother had to be involved in her household affairs, but Julian said now was the right time to buy her a house, and Julian had it prepared. Meeting with Larry, Julian is told that he has not been charged because Tony is still in a coma, so the investigation cannot be conducted. EJ then asks if there is a possibility that Julian will go to jail, but Larry explains that Tony's past life history could get Julian off the hook. Julian asks if Pralis already knows. Then Larry advises Julian to inform him immediately before Pralis hears it from someone else. While EJ scolds Julian for not usually bringing personal problems into work matters, Julian then promises he won't do it again and will refocus. Elsewhere, Michael visited her workplace. There, she saw many flowers given by Julian, and knowing that, Michael then went to Julian's workplace, but Julian did not want to see Michael. He even asked Cheryl to call the security guard to take her away. Cheryl, knowing that Julian was upset, approached him and asked him to tell her the story, but Julian didn't seem to want to be bothered and made Cheryl a little upset. When he returned home, Michael was already in his apartment while Julian, still angry, left. Michael tried to explain what had happened. She said that Julian had to meet with her husband. Michael added that she really loved him and needed him. Unexpectedly, Julian opened his heart again and let Michael into his house. And after being satisfied with having fun, Julian heard Michael get a call from her husband. No doubt it made him jealous again. The day was bright again. When they woke up, Julian and Michael were back to having fun. While Julian was busy working at his house, Michael was busy preparing for Christmas Eve at her house. Until nightfall, Michael asked Julian to stop his work and take him to get dressed because she had prepared a surprise. Michael and Julian finally had a romantic dinner. At that time, Julian invited Michael to go to his nephew's birthday party, and Michael would like to accompany him. At the office, Larry approached Julian and scolded him for being in a relationship with Michael, who was married, while Pralis, who knew, said he didn't like it. They then got into a pretty heated argument. At the end of the argument, Larry said Julian had to finish his business tomorrow. Larry would pick him up. While at his mother's house, Julian argued with his mother again because she brought up the past. Julian, who was upset, then went to the bathroom. Michael, who knew, then approached him and tried to calm him down. And at that time, Julian's childhood memories came back. In addition, Michael, with her principle of living freedom, advised Julian. Later that evening, Michael is with Boyd, while Julian goes out in his car to see Michael. And while watching them eating dinner from the car, Julian calls Michael and says he wants to see her. But Michael says she can't see him now. Julian is disappointed and turns off the phone and leaves. On the way, Julian sees a middle-aged man being beaten. He takes pictures of the incident and helps him. When he arrived at the apartment, Julian, who was disappointed with Michael, invited Brenda to stay at his house. He vented his desire for Brenda. In the early morning, Michael called Julian, but Julian did not answer, and since Julian did not pick up the phone, Michael immediately came to Julian's house to make sure that Julian was okay. While at Julian's house, there was still Brenda, who had stayed over for fun. Julian deliberately made Michael jealous by getting intimate with Brenda in front of her because Julian wanted to avenge his night out, and Michael, who was also hot to witness it, ended up causing them to clash and fight. During the argument, Michael slapped Julian, and Julian, who was upset, slapped Michael back, causing her to bounce off the floor. But whatever Michael was thinking, she suddenly picked up a pen that was lying on the floor and stabbed herself in the leg, which of course landed her in the hospital. While in the hospital, Julian was very upset about the situation he was facing. But at that very moment, Boyd, Michael's husband, came to see Julian and made sure that Julian would never be able to see Michael again, because if Julian tried to see her, Boyd would not hesitate to finish him off. The chaotic situation made Julian depressed. He could only enjoy his sadness alone, until finally, Julian dared to meet Boyd. His arrival intended to apologize directly to Michael. When he met Michael, Julian shed tears, and while apologizing to her, he also brought pictures of Michael when she was at his house, with the intention of forgetting Michael forever. After that, Julian went to his mother. There, Julian gave a fragment of the newspaper and asked his mother for an answer. Julian then told the incident in his past, where when he was a child, after school, he was looking for his mother, but his mother was found unconscious in a terrible condition. Julian asked his mother what caused her to want to end her life at that time. While it was written in the newspaper that 10-year-old Julian managed to save his mother from a gas leak, Julian lived his life like a hero, but was shrouded in lies about the facts. So is what he is currently living with Michael, living together in love. But the fact is that Michael already has a husband. While Michael is at home looking at Julian's photographs, Julian is painting his mother's childhood room, a sign that he is about to erase the past and start a new life.